hydroelectricity is responsible for producing 20% of all the world's electricity needs. 20%, that's 1 in 5 households powered by rivers just like this. That is incredible. And in fact, hydropower actually accounts for 90% of all the renewable energy used in the world today. That includes all the wind farms, all the solar farms, all the geothermal power plants, all renewable energy. 90% of it is this stuff, water. Hydroelectricity, as we know it today, came about in around 1849 when a man called James Francis created the Francis water turbine. It was revolutionary in the electricity producing world. All of a sudden, we could take these things which were only known for carrying water, and we could produce electricity out of it. It was just unheard of at the time. And in fact, the Francis water turbine is still the most widely used turbine in the world, over 170 years later. Now, of course, one of the major advantages to using hydroelectricity is the fact that it's renewable. The water isn't going to run out. It's always going to be in the reservoirs, it's always going to be in the rivers, and you're always going to be able to use it. It's also non-polluting as well. I mean, of course, you've got the setup, getting the lorries in to build the dam. You know, you might have to put more roads in the area, electricity pylons, but once that is done, it's pretty non-polluting really, and actually the water quality isn't usually affected by these dams. That's not to say, of course, there isn't disadvantages to using hydroelectric power. Of course there are. Like anything, there's always a disadvantage. And in fact, with hydroelectric power, especially creating dams, there are quite big environmental consequences. Now, one of the ones which I don't see talked about quite as much is the fact that what actually happens is a lot of silt gets caught in the dam or at the foot of the dam. And this is silt and mud and rocks and stones, which would usually carry on down the river, creating sort of the riverbeds that you see here today all the way along. It allows enough soil for trees to grow along the riverbanks, and actually it makes a huge impact, all that sediment that's carried down the river. And in a lot of dams, that's actually stopped at the foot of the dam, and further downstream a lot of ecosystems can get wiped out. Reeds go away, trees, you don't see as much of these sort of banks, riverbanks, anything like that. So that's quite a big environmental impact that hydroelectricity can have. Now, of course, the other one is that migratory fish going up the river are swimming up the river one year, and all of a sudden there's a dam in the way. And that's pretty damning, if you don't mind, to them heading upstream to spawn in the pools that they always have for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they'll swim up, see a dam, and they're stopped. And that can be catastrophic, especially for salmon populations, trout populations, any population that really relies on those pools upstream to go and breed. Now, there are a few ways that we're getting around this. One of the ways that we're solving the migratory fish problem is by using things called fish ladders. Now, what they are is almost steps at the side of a dam, and they go up all the way to the top of the reservoir, and fish can quite literally jump up the ladders as if it were sort of rapids or small waterfalls, all the way up until they're in the reservoir. They carry on swimming, and they've made it to their pools. And I do think that with a lot more inventions, sort of innovation like that, I think hydroelectric could be a lot less impactful to the environment than it is at the moment. I think, sadly, going forwards, any way of producing electricity is always going to have an impact somewhere. And we need to choose sort of the methods of producing it which have a lower impact. Climate change is one of the biggest problems we face on the planet at the moment. There's no doubt about that. And burning fossil fuels simply isn't feasible anymore. And with hydroelectric seeming like such a good option, I think we should use more of it and take more advantage of it, especially in places like the UK where we don't really use hydroelectric power at all, but there are rivers which could be used to produce electricity. So there we go, that is hydroelectric power, the advantages and disadvantages, and what is being done to solve them. What I'm going to do is link a video in the bio which is actually of one of these fish ladders, which I found absolutely amazing to watch, and I hope you'll enjoy as well. And I'll see you next time for another Woke to the Planet video. This has been Hydroelectric. I'll see you next time.